inhabitants would notice that they were stuck and needed to be rescued. I, of course, would be screaming, because that was my generation. You guys' generation, you'd use the phone. Well, they used the phone, but they used it in a different way. And the good news is they were indeed rescued by lots of people who immediately crowdsourced to go rescue them. It works. Keep that in mind next time you're stuck in a storm drain. The next component has to do with cloud. And cloud, we talk about mobile devices, and I think there's such a focus on mobility and handsets and so forth that everybody cares about them, and we're in that business, we love them as well. But it's a mistake to think of it as a mobile device. Think of it as a mobile device backed up by 1 million computers. And this, I think, point is missed by most people. So when you do Google voice recognition, what happens is you talk to the equivalent of the phone, and the phone, or wherever the operating system is, and it sends it to a bank of computers. And the bank of computers sits there and basically thousands of computers analyze it, and within a very short period of time translates your voice into text. Of course, we then have a service. We do more than 160 million translations per day now with our translate service, which is text to text. So you go voice to text, well then you can translate from text to text to a different language, and then of course we use voice synthesis to go to the other language, and now all of a sudden you can talk to each other without being able to talk to each other, because they speak a different language using this mechanism. Pretty interesting. So the power of the cloud gets very interesting. I'll give you another example. Google Goggles, the product we released a few months ago. And what happens is you take a picture of a landmark, here are these beautiful landmarks, and it's a voting algorithm, and there's all these different computers. So your handset, if you will, with your camera is really a client to, again, millions of computers somewhere in the cloud. And the different computers all vote. So the computers that are voting for landmarks say, this is clearly a landmark, and the other computers say, I don't know what it is. Take a picture of a menu, right, in German, for example. I don't speak German. Take a picture of it, and the computer that does basically OCR to language translation says, this looks like German, I'm going to translate it, and I'll produce an equivalent English translation. Very, very useful. No problem. Take a picture of a person, recognizes the person. Turns out that product is illegal in Europe, so we didn't release it. Thank goodness. Where is the line, right? Where is that line? Well, we made a clear decision on that particular face recognition app not to release it, because we didn't want to cross that, let's call it the creepy line, for sort of on the other side of where you want to go. But I use it as an example to say, here is something you can do that's amazing. Our translation, which I talked about, is done statistically. The most bizarre thing about our translation at Google is it doesn't have a dictionary. Now, I don't know how you translate languages without a dictionary. This has been explained to me 3 times by a series of mathematicians. I still don't fundamentally understand how it works. It's basically math. They look at enough copies of English and German, and eventually they can take a random piece of English and turn it into a roughly correct version of German. And furthermore, as it gets more content, it gets better. Works in 100 languages. No one's ever done this before. It's called statistical machine translation. Again, all those servers connected to that little phone. What's interesting is that the components of this that all matter are linked together by networks. And the networks themselves are phenomenal. How big is the network that we're playing with? Another statistic. From the dawn of humanity to 2003, there were 5 exabytes of information. Exabytes, a lot of information. And that's, videos, and movies and radio and books and things like that. And you can sort of measure roughly what these numbers are. In the last 2 days, the same amount of information was created. Now that's a problem. So if you plot that on a chart, it's one of these power law charts, so it looks like this and then it's straight up. So there's a reason why you have a headache. There's a reason why you can't find anything. But the rate of information generation is so overwhelming that we've never seen anything in humanity at the rate, and of course it's accelerating. So because these networks are interconnected, and because people are spending so much time generating information, which is by the way, obviously good for Google, because Google is one way of sorting all this stuff out, it gives you a sense of the scale of the opportunity before us. The important thing from my perspective, you think about mobile 4G networks, right? 5 gigabits today. The 4G specs, LTE and the US competitors, are spec'd out at 50 megabits. So you say, oh, no big deal, 50 megabits? 50 megabits is a big deal. With 50 megabits, you can do HD video quite reliably to every one of your mobile devices. So now, all of a sudden, give me another example. Google announced a product called Google Television, which is a piece of software that basically goes inside your television. It's not a separate box. Start off looking television. You click on a button, and up comes a browser. On the browser, you can see YouTube. Obvious. Everybody uses YouTube. YouTube's success. But it uses the same browsing to go between television and YouTube. So you can bookmark your television show. All the navigation is the same. The first unification of YouTube and television. So now all of a sudden, you can go back and forth and find the best choices of content, which are usually a mixture of the two. Furthermore, the computer and the browser and so forth can help you go deeper. You're covering Wimbledon and you want to see the historical footage and so forth. It's all there. We can find it, we can organize it, and you can just keep watching Wimbledon until you sort of you keel over tonight, which is sort of great. Or World Cup or whatever it is that you care about. What's very interesting, though, is that this platform is also a programming platform. So over the network, programs can come to your television, again, with your permission, that are of arbitrary complexity. First time that you can actually program your television. And what will people do with programming the television? Lots of things, most likely games, a lot of entertainment, but a lot of linking of information using all these information sources. Why is this possible? Because of the development of broadband networks, and because of the scale at which they're doing. And as you heard earlier in the panel, this is not just a British or European or an American phenomenon. This is a global phenomenon with an awful lot of implications. So I think I'll finish up, Alan, because I think we talked about just having you more ask questions than me, by saying that how should you all behave in this situation? Well, as Clay said, the future is more uncertain as a result of these, because of the nature of the iteration and scale before it. And I agree with that. But one thing to understand is that you have to get what you're doing organized into this new world. So think internet first, think mobile first. I guess in terms of monetization, which is a lot of people care about here, you'll see both advertising models, which I can talk about at some length. We're in that business, obviously. But you're also going to see subscription models. And I think you should assume that, for example, the content industries will primarily move over to these new devices, but they will have new ways in which they make money. I will tell you that the rate at which this is happening is so astounding that it's hard for me to keep up, and I've done this for my whole life. I can imagine how confusing this is to somebody who's just trying to get through life. The rate at which the product cycles, the new things, the new phenomena. But I hope in my, at least short comments, I've given you a way of thinking about it, and to think about it in terms of priorities, and to understand that the best is really before us. So with that, thank you.